When a real zombie apocalypse breaks out while shooting a zombie flick, the film's crew gets entangled in a whirlwind of confusion and misunderstanding, endangering their own lives while filming in the woods. A special effects mishap occurs as the zombies' fake guts splash among the actors. Jessica, an entitled actress, complains to the director because he promised her that she wouldn't get covered in filth. Stanley calls for a break to avoid agitating her and reprimands Richard for overlooking how their actress is supposed to be positioned. The supervisor reminds him that due to budget restraints they have to make the scene work despite their limited resources. However, the proud director refuses to acknowledge the problem. He then confronts Harold about the movie's ending, but the man lies that he's almost finished even though he hasn't started writing it yet. Shortly after, Tane, the location manager, meets with Wesley, their new production assistant. Instead of welcoming him warmly, he chastises him for arriving late. The runner reasons that he got lost on the way and the area's poor reception made it difficult to communicate with them, so his colleague hands him a radio transceiver. On their way to meet the director, Wesley expresses his excitement about working on a film set, emphasizing that he's an aspiring screenwriter. Tane dampens his enthusiasm, reminding him that he must first perform his duties as an assistant. Later on set, the manager instructs him to obey his superior's orders and wishes him good luck. The newcomer then heads towards his colleagues, excited to introduce himself to Stanley. There he becomes concerned as Clive requests the director's permission to seek treatment for his stomach flu. Suddenly the actor throws up, leaving the showrunner disgusted. When Stanley notices Wesley and discovers he's the new hire, he orders the man to take Clive to the village. As the pair head to the car, they encounter Greg, who frantically warns them about the zombie apocalypse. The actor insists his real name is Drive Herbert White, a scientist who's working on the C-virus. His colleague thinks he's just in character and urges him to leave them alone. At the hospital, Wesley requests the receptionist to get a doctor for his colleague. However, she refuses to accept more patients as a mysterious disease has ravaged their whole town. Eventually, the set runner finds a vacant room for the actor and instructs him to wait for a doctor. He contacts Richard to inform him of Clive's situation, unaware that there's a zombie in the hallway. The undead attempts to pounce on him, but the oblivious man luckily evades it. Back at the set location, Wesley hears a man screaming in distress, prompting him to check. To his surprise, he finds Harold sitting behind a tree, running a few lines from the script. The writer explains that he's merely trying to check if they're impactful, but they aren't. He then expresses his disappointment that their supposed original horror film has turned into garbage. Wesley sympathizes with his feelings and understands his frustrations, since he's also working on a movie of his own. This brightens up his colleague, who's ecstatic to meet a fellow writer. Just then, Susan, a crew member, calls the runner to assist with food preparations. Upon gazing at her, he instantly feels an attraction and starts fantasizing about her. However, his actions make the woman uncomfortable, causing her to leave abruptly. Wanting to make amends, he follows her into the tent and properly introduces himself. He stresses that he's currently a production assistant, but he considers himself more of a writer because of his words. She feels inspired to share her secret with him. She's actually an actress. In the meantime, she's working as a cook, helping that someday she'll be offered a good role. Once he finishes lunch, Wesley visits Greg in his laboratory to deliver his meal. In the new script, the man pulls him inside in a panic, convinced that zombies are lurking outside. Moments later, the runner accompanies Stanley to the outhouse and informs him that the movie's new ending is still in progress. He seizes the moment and pleads with the man to read his script, sharing that his story combines horror, romance and comedy, which he thinks is a novel idea. While his superior believes that mashups won't work, he insists on giving it a chance, and so the director eventually sticks his hand out of the door and says he'll review it. A few seconds later, the filmmaker leaves the outhouse empty-handed, confusing Wesley. To his dismay, his boss reveals that he used the paper as a substitute for tissue. That day, Jessica and Adam are filming an intimate scene when the runner suddenly enters the set, ruining their perfect moment. Tension simmers on set when the actress refuses a retake, admitting she can't keep pretending to get along with her narcissistic co-star. When the actors abandon the room, another problem arises, as Richard reveals that the stand-ins are missing, so Stanley picks Wesley to be Adam's substitute, whereas Susan will will be his partner. The woman expresses her frustration given that the humiliating role is the closest she's getting to being in front of the camera during the shoot. The pair is instructed to be in a compromising position, leading the man to fantasize about his colleague. As a result, his body becomes excited, much to his co-workers' disgust. Susan quickly separates herself from him. She voices that Wesley is being indecent, further humiliating him. Just then Richard checks on their progress and learns from the cameraman that they ruined filming. Unbothered by his presence, the pair realize that his appearance isn't fit for the film. Wesley confronts his colleague for belittling him when suddenly Stanley orders the supervisor to abandon the runner, believing he's inferior. This hurts the newcomer, who stresses that he doesn't deserve their bad treatment because he aspires to be a great writer. However, Richard discourages him from pursuing his dream, or he'll end up just becoming an exploited employee like him. Meanwhile, Greg returns to his laboratory and notices a man feeding. At first he assumes it's just one of the extras, but once he gets a closer look he realizes that it's a real zombie. Terrified, he tries to scream for help, but the undead quickly attacks him in the forest. Tane notices that Wesley appears dejected, so he checks on him. He voices that he feels unfit for the film industry, which makes him consider abandoning his dream of becoming a writer. Wanting to encourage him, his co-worker recounts his past, in which he won their rugby championship by persevering elsewhere. Stanley encounters an injured Greg, who's warning them about the incoming zombie attack. Due to his reputation as a method actor, the director dismisses his claims and even orders him to leave as he's disturbing them. Just then Jessica appears and demands the filmmaker's permission to go to the village where she has access to a proper toilet. She refuses to use the outhouse, insisting it's beneath someone of her status. Tired of her spoiled attitude, Stanley rejects her request and reminds her that she only won an award because she flaunts her body. He then threatens to end her career if she doesn't obey him. Following this, Jessica tries to use the outhouse even if it's against her will. Out of nowhere, a zombie's hand emerges from the waste pit, horrifying her. She immediately reports this to the director, who suggests they find an alternative. Hours later, when Wesley finishes digging a pit for the actress, she asks for some privacy. Amidst her business, she hears footsteps approaching and assumes it's her co-worker trying to snoop on her, but before she can confront him, a group of zombies surrounds her, leaving her helpless. Since Wesley is asleep due to fatigue, he's oblivious to Jessica's grim fate. All of a sudden he's awakened by Stanley's call demanding to know where they are, since they were supposed to return on set. Immediately he searches for the woman and discovers she's missing. Alarmed, he scours the forest and fails to locate her. Upon reaching Greg's lab, he spots two severed limbs by the door and collects them, thinking they are props. On his way to the set, he discovers the actor devouring a crew member, but he's unfazed by the gruesome sight and mistakes it as method acting. The starving undead proceeds to tackle him, ready to feast again. His threatening behavior leads Wesley to realize that Greg is truly infected. To save himself, he grabs the severed arm on the ground and strikes his undead co-worker. This accidentally impales its head on the prickly stump, instantly ending its life. Meanwhile, Stanley is relieved to see Jessica finally arrive on set, unaware that she's already a zombie. Her unkempt appearance confuses him, since she's known for being vain. He concludes that she must have pretended to use the bathroom so she could indulge in forbidden substances. Irritated by her behavior, he orders an employee to take the actress to her trailer and get her ready for their shoot. Shortly after, the crew begins shooting a scene about the zombies emerging from the woods. Coincidentally, the infected villagers infiltrate their set. Stanley is confused by their presence, mistaking them as additional extras for their film. As soon as they reach the cast, the zombies start feeding on them, causing chaos among the crew. Elsewhere, Adam weaves through a horde of the undead just to get inside his trailer. Because of their less hostile behavior, he falsely assumes that they're fans wanting his autograph. When he finds Jessica in tattered clothes inside his room, he thinks she's waiting to have an intimate encounter with him, making the actor ecstatic. Back in the set, Wesley witnesses how the zombies have eliminated most of his colleagues. Afraid that they're targeting Susan, he immediately rushes to her tent. True to his hunch, an infected tries to prey on her, urging him to grab a hand mixer and use it to eliminate him. Afterward, the pair exits the tent to find refuge, but they're overwhelmed when they see that more zombies are approaching their location. Suddenly, an extra pleads with the runner to help him, but Randy shoots him. Feeling like a hero, the prop master then gets into position and takes down more of his infected colleagues. Once he's satisfied, he invites Wesley and Susan into the truck where it's safe inside. The cook suggests that they drive the vehicle to escape the chaos, to which Tane agrees. He tries to contact the owner to retrieve the keys, but sadly he has perished. Randy, wanting to prove his strength, recommends that they eliminate the zombies instead. After preparing his weapon, the man leaps in front of their enemies and attempts to shoot them. However, the machine gun's powerful recoil accidentally takes his life, shocking his colleagues. Later on, the group decides to travel on foot, but their creatures block their way. Wesley fires his rifle in defense, but he misses and blames the gun for making it impossible to aim. However, Tane efficiently shoots the zombies using his pistol, leaving him embarrassed. As they escape, an infected person grabs Harold, prompting him to stab her using his pen. Though saved, he refuses to leave because his notebook containing his craft is missing. He finds it lying next to a corpse and tries to retrieve it, but the undead pulls him into a starving swarm. At another location, Stanley and Richard are perched atop the trailer trying to avoid the horde. The former witnesses how his dreams are crumbling due to the apocalypse, causing him to break down. The supervisor suggests that they must abandon the set, but he refuses to go. The director admits that he can't leave now because he borrowed money to fund the rejected movie. Determined to recoup his losses, he announces they'll continue filming shortly after Adam leaves his trailer when he stumbles upon Wesley and Susan stopping the bodies from reanimating. The worried man interrupts, believing that they're his fans. Tane then informs him that they're not humans anymore. Much to his confusion, this time the runner explains that a zombie apocalypse has broken out and that they need to leave. Suddenly Jessica tries to exit the trailer, prompting the manager to close the door. Adam insists that she's harmless, stressing that they just made love. Fearing that the undead woman has bitten him, the group urges him to disrobe so they can check for wounds. The actor refuses, but when Tane threatens to shoot him, he complies. His colleagues are relieved that the actor is unscathed. Meanwhile, Stanley has completely lost his mind and records a gruesome scene where the zombies are feasting on their prey. Committed to his craft, he orders Richard to throw himself into the swarm, promising that his sacrifice will be immortalized in the film. The man hesitates, but his superior appeals to his emotions and expresses that he appreciates his hard work since he's been craving validation. He mindlessly obeys the director as the undead devour the poor man. The director revels in his suffering, captivated by the horrifying sight. He soon meets his karma as zombies sneak up behind and attack him. That night, the remaining survivors cross the swamp to reach the village. Unexpectedly, an undead lunges at Tane, dragging him beneath the murky water. His absence leaves his co-workers in distress, wondering if he has met his demise. To their surprise, he emerges, but the zombie is missing, alarming them. Eventually they find it lurking behind them, prompting Susan to strike it with her axe. Just then the manager feels pain in his shoulder, only to discover that he's bitten. Despite this, he insists on accompanying the group, wanting to be of use while he's still conscious. A while later they arrive at a nearby farmhouse and find an abandoned truck. Tane checks if it's working, but is disappointed that its gas tank is empty. Driven by necessity, the survivors break into the house and find its owner staring blankly into nothing. Wesley confronts him and is surprised that he's infected. Before he can attack, Adam grabs his gun and shoots his associate, reprimands him, afraid that he'll draw the horde's attention. The actor reasons that he just wants to survive, given that he needs to maintain his career. Tane observes that his emotions are clouding his judgment, so he tries to calm him down. However, Adam aims the gun at him, seeing him as an enemy because he's bitten. Thankfully, Wesley wins him over with flattery and vows to help someone of his status survive. In haste, Adam returns his rifle and leaves, informing them that he needs to use the bathroom. As he tries to urinate, he feels an excruciating pain confusing him. Upon checking his crotch, he discovers that sleeping with Jessica has infected him, much to his despair. Meanwhile, Susan and Wesley manage to grab a gas container, but discover it's empty. Without warning, the group hears a horde of zombies approaching their location. Alarmed by the danger, Tane attempts to convince Adam to leave with them, but the actor refuses. Because of this, only the three remaining survivors find a way out. Throughout their search, the undead surround their possible exit, leaving them helpless. The manager turns on the porch light and spots a gas tank near the shed, giving him hope that they can still escape. He volunteers to fill up their container and load it in the truck's engine. Then he promises to distract the zombies so they have the chance to get inside the vehicle during his errand. Tane reminisces about his time as a rugby athlete using his moves to evade the zombies. Once he gets to the shed, he proceeds to refill the vessel and douse the structure with gas. He then throws the container to the house, celebrating as it lands on the porch. However, more zombies crowd the area, compelling him to set the shed aflame. Afterward, he begins to perform the haka, drawing their attention to him. Upon hearing the signal, Susan attempts to retrieve the gas, but an infected Adam grabs her from behind. She tries to fight him, but her strength is no match for him. Wesley steps in to restrain him, only to be shoved aside as he's about to bite her. The runner covers his mouth with his hand and stabs his head with a glass shard outside. Tane successfully lures the zombies to his location just in time for the gas tank to explode, eliminating him and most of the undead population in the house. Wesley worries that he'll soon transform into a monster, so he encourages Susan to dispose of him. When she aims the gun at him, he stops her, explaining that he has thought of a solution. Later in the kitchen, the woman chops his hand off, causing him to scream in pain. Wesley endures and heads to the stove to cauterize his wound and stop the bleeding. Then the pair exits the house and rushes towards the truck. While the man fills up its tank, Susan shoots the infected to prevent them from swarming them. As soon as it's filled with gas, they enter the vehicle, but Wesley realizes he can't drive because of his injury, so the woman takes over but warns him that she hasn't driven in ages. To make matters worse, Adam appears, prompting the injured survivor to guide the woman in driving. The following day, while on their way to town, Wesley takes his chance to ask Susan out. The woman accepts, believing he may be the last man on Earth. Soon they arrive at their destination and they're once again challenged as another horde of zombies close in. Suddenly Wesley shouts "cut" in the background, as he's now a director. After surviving the zombie apocalypse, the couple decided to produce a movie based on their real experience.